Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Francis.
Hello, hello. Yes, I
Hello.
think now it's nice, huh? It's okay like this?
Where are you?
Excellent.
I'm somewhere over the rainbow.
Yeah, here we go. Hello.
Hello from Salzburg. Hello.
Hello, Salzburg. Here, Vienna. Hi.
Hello. Hi. So
Servus.
yes, the same sunshine as in Salzburg.
Yes, yes. A little more higher. But it's okay. It's better than minus.
That's it.
Sound is okay? View is okay?
Sound is okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Just checking. Hello, hello from Vienna. Again, test 2.
Loud and clear.
Alles geht fantastisch. Du wirst sehr gut.
Fantastisch, das. Sehr gut. Super, super.
Ja, wir hören alles fantastisch.
Sehr gut. Ich werde hier mein Mic zumachen.
Ja.
Zumachen. Speaking from Vienna.
Okay, we'll start in about 2 or 3 minutes. Let's just give everyone a bit of grace period. Okay, I think we can begin. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the international webinar entitled, Where Do We Go From Here? A COVID-19 Recovery for Urban Tourism. My name is Eli Friedman. I'm the head of the International Relations Office at Ashkelon Academic College. It's a great honor to open this important and timely event. This is the third in a series of international webinars that have been presented over the last few months under the auspices of the International Relations Office at Ashkelon Academic College. When we at the International Relations Office received a proposal for this webinar from Dr. Yael Ram from our tourism department to hold an international webinar on the future of urban tourism within the context of the COVID crisis, we knew that this was an essential topic and it was worthwhile to hold this event at this time. There are many unknowns about the future of tourism and specifically urban tourism. And we hope that today's webinar will provide us with some important ideas and thoughts about the future of urban tourism. I don't want to take too much time, so with no further ado, I would like to turn over the microphone to the president of Ashkelon Academic College, Professor Chaim Breitbart. Chaim, have you joined us? I just spoke to him on the phone and he said he was joining. Professor Breitbart, are you here? Okay, so what we're going to do for the sake of saving time, we'll switch the order of the opening remarks and we'll move directly to Mr. Kobi Balda, who's the director, the Deputy Director General at the Israeli Ministry of Tourism. Kobi, we're very happy to have you with us today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know that you have a lot going on. We're looking forward to hearing your opening remarks. Please, Kobi.
So first, let me thank you for having me at that webinar, that conference. The whole issue of post-COVID, though it's not exactly post-COVID, we are now witnessing maybe the beginning of the sixth wave. But post-COVID tourism is one of the most important issues that we're dealing in the office in the last 2 years. Our conference that's scheduled for next week, international conference that's scheduled for next week, will be all about post-COVID trends and how do we restart the tourism industry in the era of the aftermath of the COVID. We do see some very interesting effects, mainly when we're talking with colleagues from abroad about the tendency of people who would like to get much more quiet places rather than pack nightclubs, etc. They're looking more into the countryside, more into open space, and also people learn to cherish life. So there's another very interesting trend that we get to see is that there is 3 generations starting to travel together, the grandfather, the son, and the grandson together. So we're trying to focus ourselves upon those new pattern of demand by people who are interested in visiting, and we're trying to adjust ourselves into that new trends. And I saw with us Itamar that is working about virtual tourism, and we're trying to collaborate with him as well on that topic. And we're trying to be as creative as we can in a new, I don't know if it's a brave new world of aftermath of the coronavirus. So looking forward to hear from you guys, and thank you very much.
Hey, Kobi, thank you very much for your opening remarks. I think you shed some important light on new possibilities for tourism in this, you called it the post-COVID era. I think that's a little bit optimistic as we see the numbers rising, but let's call it the living alongside the COVID era, right? Thank you very much for your words. And I see that Professor Breitbart, Chaim Breitbart, he's actually here under the name of his wife Shoshana, but I can see from the picture that it is Chaim. Professor Breitbart, the president of Ashkelon Academic College, thank you for joining us and agreeing to deliver some opening remarks. Please, Professor Breitbart.
Okay, thank you, Eli. Well, welcome all of you. It's my great honor and pleasure to open this international webinar. Where do we go from here? A COVID-19 recovery of urban tourism. The global tourism sector was damaged like no other sector during the COVID crisis over the last 2 years. And various professions in tourism-related field, such as international travel, hospitality, the cultural and educational centers, had difficulty surviving during this period. While vaccines and other measures have allowed us to live alongside the virus, there is no doubt that the tourism industry has not recovered to its pre-COVID status. This webinar will specifically examine the issue of urban tourism, which faces additional challenges from which rural tourism is exempt. I'm sure that the session will offer both researchers and practitioners from the tourism industry import insight and initiatives regarding the future of urban tourism. I'm thrilled to see that the program today includes researchers and practitioners from the World Tourism Organization of the United Nations, Austria, and Israel. I would like to thank all of the speakers who have agreed to take time out of your schedules to participate today. I will not mention everyone, but as not to make too much time. The ongoing cooperation that we have with Salzburg University of Applied Science is a great assist to Ashkelon Academic College. I thank the representatives from Salzburg, Professor Eva Brucker and Magister Werner Turner, for your ongoing dedication to our cooperation. I would like to thank Dr. Shachar Shiloh and Dr. El Ram for initiating this timely and important webinar. And I would like to thank Dr. Eli Friedman and Nofar Moshe of our International Relationship Office for the facilitating of our series of important international webinars, which are so essential for advancing international cooperation. Last, I would like to thank all of you, all our participants today, for taking time out of your schedules to take part in this event. I wish you all a successful and fruitful event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Breitbart, for your opening words. So now I would like to turn the floor over to our panel and our panel chair, Dr. Shachar Shiloh, the head of the tourism department at Ashkelon Academic College. Thank you, Shachar, and also thank you, Yael, for initiating this. I know Professor Breitbart also thanked you, but I wanted to as well. This is really quite a unique seminar that has a lot of interactive and multimedia things going on, a little bit different than your average academic seminar. So I think this should be quite interesting. Shachar will explain things. So please, the floor is yours, Shachar.
Well, thank you very much, Eli, and thanks very much for everyone involved and joining us. If I may have just the opportunity to address some of the issues, we're about to hear some distinguished and honorable, interesting people from all different positions around the world, from the UNWTO to our friends in Salzburg, in Austria, and to some excellent professionals from the industry here in Israel. But just before that, let me introduce to you another, I would say an anecdote, but it is something which is extremely interesting as a business. And this is our friends from the virtual tourism who will present during this interesting webinar two different initiatives and two different worlds that are possible to do tours through virtual tours. So the first one, before we'll make some more efforts to entertain you, friends, is going to be our friend Francis Vieira from Vienna, who's going to follow Theodor Herzl, actually from Vienna to Jerusalem. The next one, my friends, would be in Jerusalem, but that's going to be furthermore during the webinar. So Francis, please hop on the wagon and take your position and lead us through Vienna, please.
Thank you very much. Also, an honor to be part of this. So the ones that doesn't know me, my name is Francis Vieira. I was born in Brazil. I moved when I was 10 to Austria, and with 18, long time ago, I became a driver guide, and the last 20 years in Austria. I worked as a tour guide in Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Boston, New York, Manila, Florence, Madrid, and Rio de Janeiro. And the last 20 years here in Vienna. This opportunity, it's great because it's a first. Imagine 37 years in this job. And I've been many times around the world. I've been to many tours here in Vienna, but this one here is special to get the footstep of Theodor Herzl. You probably think where he's staying or why he's staying at a cemetery. Even though most of you probably know Theodor Herzl is in Jerusalem, but he passed away in Lower Austria. Austria is divided into different states. So he passed away in Lower Austria and was buried here in this beautiful cemetery. And if you look around, I will just turn the camera the other way and I will keep talking. Let me check here what I have here. So this is a beautiful cemetery, a very classic cemetery. It came here around 1880. So a really long time ago. It's part of the Vienna District 19. Vienna is divided under different districts, and we have altogether 23. So 19, it's a very classic, beautiful area. For a long time was not really part of Vienna. And we have here one of the few cemeteries in Austria. They are really accepting all confession. There is on the front, somewhere to the left, is the Jewish part. On the front, on the right, is the Muslim part. It's very interesting to know this little detail because most cemeteries, they have different kind of rules. So about Dr. Herzl, you will see here straight ahead, very beautiful. We have here, he was here officially with his wife, Jeanette, and also his parents. Maybe you can read here at the bottom, Jacob and Jeanette Herzl. And why here in Vienna? Actually, he was born in Hungary. At the time, it was really part of Hungary. 7 years later, it became part of the Austrian-Hungarian monarchy. He was born 1860. He spent some time in Hungary, and then later on, when he was 18, something very bad happened in his life. His sister, Pauline, passed away, and the parents didn't feel very nice to stay, maybe because of the memory, so they moved to Vienna. In Vienna, he started with 18 at the Vienna University, and with 19, he had a job, and he met a very good colleague of his, Mr. Stefan Zweig. Imagine that, meeting Stefan Zweig at a time, not so famous yet. For me, it's interesting because Stefan Zweig, he passed away in Brazil, in Petrópolis. With 24, he was already doctor of law. Imagine that, 24 years young. We're talking about 1884. Imagine the learning, imagine the possibility. And he didn't want to get into the law. He wanted officially to get into journalism. He was a very good writer. He and his sister Pauline started to write and to read 1 year before they attended school in Pest. Just so you know, we have Buda, we have Pest. Now today, people mostly know as Budapest. But at the time, it was really two separate cities. So he was born at a part known as Pest. And with 24, with his Doctor of Law, he got a job at a newspaper known as Neue Wiener Presse, a very famous newspaper. And he was not really interesting about the life of Jew. He could not speak Hebrew, he could not speak Jewish. So he was not really the person that you think will someday become something very great. And that's what's interesting is because he started with his name, Herzl. In German, it's like a little heart. Herz means heart, and Herzl is like the little heart. And he had actually a big heart because what he did during many, many years was observing that people had something about the Jew. He was part Jew, but not so 100%. And actually, a regular person will say, I don't care, forget about it. But he was really intrigued about that. He wanted to really to have a problem solved. So he went to many, many friends and said, I have a great idea. You all will love it. We have to baptize every Jewish baby as a Christian. Imagine that. What idea. Everybody, no, you cannot do that. It's impossible. He said, that's the only way. That's the only way, because the Jew, it's the one that don't really have a land. They don't have really a place. People even joke around and made some not so good jokes saying, Jew, go back to Palestine. But Palestine at the time was not part what he wanted to be. It was not really a country for the Jew. There were Jews all over the world, but they were foreigners in a place they lived, in a place they were born. And he was totally different about that. He saw totally different. And he came one day to be a reporter in Paris, and he followed one gentleman known as General Captain Dreyfus. And he heard the people screaming, kill the Jews, kill the Jews. And he didn't understand. This is one gentleman. They should kill him, not the Jew. We are not the fault that this gentleman was considering a spy. And later on, they found out he was not really a spy. He was a little mistaken. But anyhow, because maybe he was a Jew, he was stripped of his medal. He could not go back. And he went to a very, very, very long trip to Devil's Island, very far away to jail, because he was Jew. So Dr. Herzl thought, let's try something else. Let's get one country for us, one state. And that will be maybe somewhere in Argentina. He had possibility, maybe somewhere in Uganda, in Africa. He had very good connection. And also Palestine. This was the three options. So he traveled around the world. And imagine that. We talk about 1895, 1897, traveled during that time. It was amazing. Horse carriage, not so good trains, not so good roads. Today, we complain because we are staying in line for 5 minutes and we say, oh my God, look at that line. Oh, I will never leave here. And he was traveling around the world. He talked to kings. He talked to sultans. He went even to the Pope. But at the time, it was not easy. Even today, it's not easy. If you want to talk to the Pope, it takes a long, long, long time, a long procedure. And he did all that. And people were not really into that idea, but he found out it was a way. You have to dream about it, and then you can make it. And this was like a little slogan of Dr. Herzl. He kept walking around that idea. He died around 1904. At the time, there was no idea about Palestine, but his footstep was already there. people thought that's really a good idea. So let's try to do this. And finally, can you imagine, 14th of August, 1949, because on his will, he wrote, if someday, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 50, if there will be a state of Israel, I want to be buried there. So Austrian government accepted that will and moved him from here to his original homeland in Israel. Today, we have the World Zionism Organization that every 5 years has a huge big event. The last couple of years, only Israel. The last time was really 2020. The next time will be around 2025. 2020 was only online. I would love to show you someday part of the places in Vienna. We have buildings named after Theodor Herzl. We have square named after Theodor Herzl. We have school and we have little walkway named after Theodor Herzl. And here is the mostly interesting part, the part he lied down for around 40 years. Amazing. Huh? This is just my little tour. Like you see, I walked around. Let me go here back to the camera so I can see you. All right. It's just a little step, but like you know, if you have idea, if you have a dream, it's really working out. Sometimes also with tourism, if there is a good idea, you have just to push it. You have to talk to people. You have to get internationally. And today, thanks to the technology, Zoom, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, it's very good to make good connection. I'm a very good example. Thanks to Itamar, we know each other from other groups. So he invited me to do this beautiful footstep. I hope you enjoyed. Sorry for my voice, not so good. I did yesterday a 4-hour tours. That's my voice a little bit, but I hope you like it, okay? Bye-bye, everyone. Greetings from Vienna. Have a good one. I'm out now.
Thank you very
Back to
much,
you.
Francis, for a pleasant and excellent demonstration of one of the different techniques. My friends, you need to understand that virtual tourism is a big thing. Our expert will talk last. His name is Itamar Ben David, and he will explain some of the new methods which gives you the possibility to enjoy different technologies during these kind of virtual tours. What we've seen right now was a live virtual tour. Itamar will demonstrate another technique with using Google Earth, and he will teach us some more about the others. If I may introduce our next speaker, and please, something for all speakers, please do remember to give a short note about yourself when you do start your openings. And the reason is because we are working on a webinar and it's going to be very hard for me to present each and every one of you. So Mrs. Sandra Carvalho, who is our next distinguished speaker from the UNWTO, please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. Good to see everyone on the call. As it was mentioned, I'm Sandra Carvalho. I'm Portuguese, if coming after Francis, being a Brazilian. So my pleasure to be here with you and to share a little bit of our vision of the challenges and opportunities that we have in the current circumstances to recover and to reinforce urban tourism. I think I'm allowed to share my screen. Just wanted to share some visuals and data with you. Particularly, I always very data-oriented person, so I think it always helps when we talk about big numbers to have something that people can relate to in a chart. So the challenge given to me was to talk about where do we go from here, COVID recovery on urban tourism, and obviously what is the here that we are at this moment in time. It is obviously a year that it's still quite challenging, as we in the sector know. We were definitely one of the most affected sectors by the pandemic. And I always give this comparison. During the 2009 economic crisis, tourism lost around 4% of all international tourism arrivals. And in 2020, we lost 73. So this is really the magnitude of the recovery that we still have ahead of us. We finished 2021 with obviously improved numbers. although the challenge ahead, as I mentioned, is still very significant. The impact of tourism in the economy has came down from $3.5 trillion in terms of direct tourism GDP to 1.6 in 2020 and slightly up in 2021. But as you can see, there's much road ahead of us. In terms of regions, and obviously this is very much connected to the challenge of travel restrictions, you will see that the regions that have had better results, namely Europe and the Americas, are the ones where travel restrictions and obviously vaccination, which is very much connected, have advanced significantly, particularly in Europe. The advancements among the European Union with the COVID certificate made a big difference in intra-European travel, and we've seen that Europe actually increased by 19% compared to the previous year, but still very much 63%, as you can see, behind 2019 numbers. The Americas, the same, on a different approach. Many countries in the Americas had a more open vision on travel restrictions, and this is what has happened. So overall as well, I'd like to share the good news, which is, although we actually were down overall in 2021 compared to 19, 69%, when you look at the period from March to December, you actually see an increase. So obviously, if we're comparing with data that is in terms of the world pre-pandemic, we're talking January to March, but if we look at the period afterwards, you actually can see that there is a significant increase, which is obviously reflecting the improvement in terms of the situation. So what is our vision going ahead? Our scenarios for 2022, and this is obviously global. It's very important because the different regions, Asia, for example, is still very much closed. The different regions will have a different behavior. So our scenarios point that we might end the year at -50 or between -50 and -63%, always comparing with 2019. This is important because obviously we are in an improvement phase, but we still are below those levels, and obviously the supply is there. And although we have seen a growth in domestic tourism, which has been very important for cities, for example, in many parts of the world, still the recovery of international tourism is critical for the resilience of cities. So I also like to share with you our agenda for urban tourism. So UNWTO's interest into working particularly with the higher level of government in cities emerged particularly when we started to see issues of over-tourism in many cities, the importance of getting tourism in the higher agenda of cities, because the challenge was looking at the tourism in cities only from a tourism perspective. And our challenge is to say, okay, we need that agenda to go wider. So we need all the administrative responsible people around the city to be working together for city tourism, because there's many areas of city tourism which are actually not in the hands of tourism. This happens also often at national level, but at the city level, when there's pressures, it's even more relevant. So we have issued a set of recommendations for urban tourism development that were approved by our General Assembly in 2019. And among all of them, I would probably highlight some which I think are more important than ever at this point in time. One is that we need to make tourism part of the overall urban agenda. We need to stop looking at tourism as just an isolated silo, because all the policies around urban development, housing, culture, waste management, mobility, all of them have a huge impact on tourism and vice versa. We've seen that when there was pressures in terms of housing in many cities. So it is important. The second point, and we saw it before as well, is the importance of having new experiences in cities. And the link between urban tourism and creative industries is probably one of the strongest and needs to be reinforced. Particularly now with the pandemic, what we've seen as well is that cities that manage to create new experience outside have been really attracting new segments. Obviously, also cities who were prepared and facilitated working at a distance, which has grown significantly in many cities. So I think we need to look more and more into a wider option of urban tourism as a place not only to visit, but a city that's pleasant to visit, to live, and to enjoy. Then obviously we need to use more technology for better planning and management. For us, the issue of measuring and monitoring is very important. So big data allows us to understand in cities how people move, where they go, how they spend, how much time they spend in each area, what are the routes that they prefer. And that is critical when we need to create new products, when we need to diversify the demand in the city, but also in terms of time. Then we need a new governance model. More and more cities need to count and have regular monitoring of community. What does the city residents think about tourism? How do they see themselves impacted by tourism? What would they like their city to be in terms of tourism? And have that monitoring on a regular basis. So with that in mind, UNWTO has created in 2019 a new agenda, which is bringing mayors responsible for a discussion on tourism in the urban agenda. So really not the directors of tourism, which have a specific responsibility, but bringing mayors or deputy mayors in charge of tourism to the table and have a common agenda, exchange experiences, and learn from each other on many, many areas. We've also launched pre-pandemic, but still very much up to date from a question of principle, a survey among residents to understand their perception of city tourism in terms of impact and measures. And it was very interesting because most of the people saw the benefits of tourism as good to help cities improve infrastructure and facilities, to create experiences and attractions that also benefit residents. And obviously, and you need to think this was done pre-pandemic, so still in a moment where city tourism was growing very much, there was a very small percentage of people who were actually in favor of limiting the number of visitors or stopping promotion. But they did thought that it was important to ensure that the benefits are felt by citizens. So I'd leave you with two resources which might be of interest for those who work in this area. The first one is a report we did with Breda University and Self in Stenden in the Netherlands on over-tourism, understanding and managing urban tourism beyond perceptions, which goes very much into research into residents' perception of tourism. And the second one is actually a series of case studies that you can find in our e-library on how have cities managed over tourism in terms of the use of technology, in terms of consultation process with the community, and in terms of very much having a monitoring of community engagement on a regular basis. So this was all from my side, and obviously very happy to share any other thoughts on this. We know that COVID has impacted city tourism more than other areas, that people obviously in the pandemic situation had an urge to go outside more crowded spaces. But at the same time, cities obviously have an important share of MICE and business travel, which is now starting to recover as well. But it is also the moment of cities to rethink tourism in their own agenda. And this is really our biggest message, is how do we make sure that tourism is part of that wider urban agenda in terms of sustainability, in terms of social inclusion, and in terms of environmental sustainability. So pleasure to be with you, and happy to follow.
Well, thank you very much, Sandra, for a very short and very well updated presentation that gives us all the knowledge we may need to begin with in such a great question. Well, as this is a webinar, it's very hard to see people, trying to understand or trying to hope on. But do we have any questions? You may use the chat so I can see you. And if you do have any questions right now, we still have the time that we can attend Sandra before moving on to the next speaker? Or if anyone wants to use a hand, as a raised hand, so we can give you the permission, please. Oh, we do have one. Well, thank you very much.
I think we have a physical hand.
Physical hand is fine. Please, Shelley, go on.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy that I'm here. I'm an anthropologist and I'm dealing with several subjects, especially tourism and heritage studies and museum studies. And my question is to you, Sandra. I would like to know more about the aspect of sustainability in tourism. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shelley, for the question. I think it's such a big issue that it's really our biggest challenge at this point. I think there's, I would say, three key elements here. One is that we look into sustainability as, I would say, an holistic approach. And obviously, we all think about environment, which obviously climate change impacts, waste management, water resources are critical in communities, and it's important, first of all, to monitor how tourism impacts those resources. And this is still a big challenge because worldwide, there still doesn't exist a common harmonized methodology that has been developed for countries to measure the impact of tourism in the environment. It is a process that's currently quite advanced. UNWTO has proposed and has been working with the UN Statistical Commission on establishing that methodology, both for the impacts in the environment, but also the social impacts. But we have from the start a challenge, which is how do we measure the impact of tourism in the different areas? So that's one of the challenges. The second one is obviously adaptation from the tourism sector itself. As you all know, more than 80%, and in some countries more than 90% of tourism businesses are SMEs. So we're talking about small businesses, sometimes with not big capacity for adaptation. So it is critical to actually have programs in place that can help those companies adapt to the new challenges in terms of reducing energy consumption. But there has been a lot of advancements. Prior to the pandemic, we all see now the plastics initiatives have been growing, and that's a very positive and good sign. Many big hotel chains are very committed and have specific elements. And obviously then we have one of the challenges, which is also aviation. As you probably know, a big part of the emissions come from aviation in tourism, but also the good thing is that the airlines have committed to objectives of reducing aviation impacts. So I think obviously it is a long way. It is also for the tourism sector and looking into the social impact component. I think for many years, obviously environmental sustainability has been in the forefront, and we know the emergency of climate change, but also issues of women empowerment, inclusion of minorities. It's something that not only it's an obligation, but there's a huge opportunity actually in tourism in terms of competitiveness as well. In terms of developing products for people who have some other kinds of limitations, but also to include different people working in tourism is really something that brings value to the sector, brings diversity, and this is a critical element for us as well. So I think my message would be always look into the three pillars. Support SMEs because they're critical, and we need national policies that back up all this, because without them it will be very difficult.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Before just moving on to our next speaker, Magister Bert Brügger, who's the Director of Tourism in Salzburg, please let me make sure with all of our speakers. Friends, I remind you, we have 15 minutes for our explanation and presentation, and then 5 more minutes are actually made for questions from our distinguished crowd. So, Magister Bert, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Shachar, there are more questions in the chat box. Just
So
let you know.
I will follow to them afterwards, if I may, so we can move it on time. Okay, so do we have Magister Berg with us?
Yes, I'm here.
You're here. Thank you very much. So the floor is yours, my friend. We'll move on to questions afterwards. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon from Salzburg. My name is Herbert Bruck. I am director of the tourist office of Salzburg, and we do the tourism marketing for the city of Salzburg, and we are running the convention center. Now I would like to give you my presentation. Yeah. Okay. Well, I would like to give you some information on the impact of Corona for Salzburg and take a look at the pre-Corona period when Salzburg was in a growth area. We had some problems of over-tourism, like too many visitors, too many coaches, and too many groups. I would like to talk about the marketing we did in 2020 for a restart, and give you an idea of the perceptions of the residents throughout this pandemic period, and give you a future outlook of tourism industry for Salzburg. What are we preparing to overcome the problems of over tourism? Well, this is the development of the overnights in Salzburg. As you see, it's a period of steady growth, and from 2004 to 2019, we grew from 1.8 million to 3.3 million overnights. And if you take a look at the occupancy, rooms occupancy, this increased from 60% in 2009 to 80%, which means the city was fully booked for almost 300 days, and the hotel business was a very profitable and good business. But an interesting question is, what were the accelerators? What were the drivers of this industry? And I would say that altogether it's digitalization, the new technologies, the easy accessibility to all the tourism products, to all the information, and of course, economic welfare and wealth. People can afford to travel. So tourism is almost completely digitalized. Sales and marketing, all the information is online, and it's easy accessible to book, and easy bookable. In all the packages, all the flights and all the hotels are easy bookable. We see a globalization of information, tourism, and distribution, and shrinking transfer costs expanded the affordability, and it's no problem to buy flexible and tailor-made packages online. Social media has become a very important communication channel for the tourist offices, for the cities to do marketing. And you have nowadays, you have to be an Instagrammable destination, yeah. And people like to go there, and it's one of their one of their things why they visit some destinations is to be Instagrammable, and that's the destination where you have to be. Social media is coming up with new marketing tools almost every month, which makes it easier to do on-target marketing, and programmatic advertising means automated, data-based, selective online approach, and it enables us to really attract clients in our focused market segments. So the tourist is also a testimonial, an ambassador, a communicator for our product. And with every post he does, you get a huge coverage, and you know the power of pictures. And all the digital assistants, smart devices like smartphone, watches, tablets, and apps. They all support the online distribution of tourism information. And yeah, it's this digitalization brings along a lot of new business models. We have seen a lot of new budget concepts in gastronomy and hotellery. And the most important of these business models is the low-cost carriers who really fired our industry, especially in the cities. And we see that very mighty online travel agencies like Booking, Airbnb, and Expedia, they really gained a huge market power in transport, accommodation, and experiences. And it's gonna be very interesting for the future, because if you see that having the client, having the customer means that you are having the market and you are having the market power. So we will see which role the online travel agencies will play in the future in our industry. Corona left a few global marks. For example, the touristic turnover fell from 9.2 trillions to 4.7 trillions. And there were the jobs from 1919 from 340 millions fell to 270 millions in 2020. And until now, we have almost lost 100 million jobs in this industry. The European airlines lost 22 billions, the airports 33.6 billions, and worldwide the airlines were subsidized in 2020 by 170 billions and in 21 by 80 billions. This means there was much more money spent for keeping alive the airline industry than worldwide people got development aid. And alone in the European Union, 4,200 grounded planes were standing around on the airports. And I'm quite sure that many of them will come back. So you see the development in Salzburg with the pandemic, with several lockdowns, where the overnights decreased from 3.3 millions to 1.2 and 1.3 in 2020 and 21. And if you look at the Austrian cities in 21, we see that the room occupancy was about between 29 and 37, and the average daily rate is about from 90 euros to 107 euros. And this means that a lot of business got lost in pandemic times. If you look at the top 10 of the nations, we see that in 2019, Salzburg had 37.2% from the German-speaking markets, from the neighboring markets, but still, and we had 5 markets in the top 10 of overnight from the overseas market: USA, China, South Korea, the Arabian countries, and Australia. And in the year later, in 2021, the German market moved to almost 70%. Yeah, so we had a completely change of our clients, and we see that Salzburg was able to adapt quite fast. The recovery was quite fast, but we changed clients. There came in more Germans and Austrians, and no people from, or almost no people from the overseas markets. If you look at Austria and Germany, so we see that Austria and Germany increased from Austria from 130,000 to over 150,000, and Germany from 140,000 to almost 200,000, which is in percent for Austria, an increase of 19%, and for Germany, 43.5%. Another chart shows us the overnights per month. We see on the left side, we see on the left side, we see our problems throughout the winter. We see a fast recover for the summertime, July and August, and the decline in the cold season of the year in November and December, which was also supported by some lockdowns. This is a chart that compares the province of Salzburg in light blue, the city of Salzburg, and the city of Vienna. We see that also the provinces had troubles and problems. Salzburg went up to 70% of the occupancy of 2019, and there was the decline throughout all the markets, throughout all the countryside and the cities of Salzburg and Vienna. We saw a decline by the end of the year. So, what did we do to keep alive in this sad period of being in town locks and having all these restrictions of Corona? Well, for each of these years in 2021 and 22, we launched multi-channel marketing campaigns, and with a target on the earthbound traveling markets, and with focus on the neighboring countries of Austria, Switzerland, Germany, Czechia, and we spent much more money, and we had a far higher advertising presence in these markets than pre-COVID. And this year in 2022, we will also start B2B marketing in our most important overseas market, the United States, because this year in Bavaria, the Overcome Passion Play takes place, and usually in this area, in this period, about some 100,000 Americans are visiting this Passion Play, and they also to combine this Passion Play with European coach tours, and many of these coach tours are also coming into Salzburg. And for the next year, we are planning to educate and train the industry staff in Asia. We had quite a lot of traffic from Asia, and hopefully we'll be able to open this market step by step, beginning with 2023. Our focus is on premium hotel and experiences, and there is a clear strategic business segment. There's business segments which with a focus on overnight guests, on culture travelers, and MICE. And for the MICE segment, as we are running our convention center, we can say that if we are allowed to have conventions and meetings, people really move back very fast, and they like to go, and they like to travel, and they like to see each other, they like to meet each other. So we are quite optimistic for this year to have a good year in the MICE segment. And actively, we do not target day visitors for the city of Salzburg. The clients, the locals, the residents, I think they would be very happy to have the tourists back, and I think they would even like the coaches. There is a clear awareness of the economic loss by decreasing visitors, and the perception of the economic importance of tourism in a city where more than 50% of the gross regional product is made by tourism. And even in the shopping area, we saw short-term change in the retail shops, and many shops were closed. New shops moved in, but at the very end of the day, the rental fees went down. We see staff shortages in hotels, gastronomy, and in the service industries. Some hotels couldn't open, and others had to work with limited offers. And for many tourism or industry sectors in Austria, compulsory short work for residents was necessary in order to keep the tourism industry and to especially the MICE industry alive. And the public authorities paid good subsidies for many players in the tourism industry in order not to get bankrupt businesses. We had to do. We tried to work out on a plan and some strategies to face the over tourism, and already in 2018 we started a clear coach regulation with 2 coach parkings and a coach pen for the historic city center. We now have an online registration system for coaches with a time slot system for 2 terminals for arrival and pickup. They have to pay a fee of 70 euros, and this online registration enables us to aerial and temporal allocate between terminals and throughout the day. And this is quite important to get the things done. We are also working on a visitor management tool, which is based on sensors to be able to count. We do it with experts of the Austrian Institute of Technology. They are experts in big data. We do a lot of mobile tracking and tracing and count people. We will try to simulate these tourist flows, and at the very end of the day, we'll try to simulate inventions to be able to achieve better steering, a better guiding of the visit, a better allocation, to separate visitor streams in order to prevent frictions and complaints of both guests and locals. We offer a park and ride shuttle bus during the peak season from one of our parking areas at the fair center. The Salzburg City Card includes public transport and the transport to the neighboring villages, from and to the neighboring villages. And we offer alternative theme routes off the beaten track, with the idea to bring the people, to move the people out of the hotspots of the city center. And we try to digitalize and homogenize the ticketing system of all Salzburg museums. We have a hotel route system and a visitor route system. And we also have defined guidelines for group leaders and tour guides. So we recommend limited group sizes of 25 pax, and we try to separate guided groups. And we are working on a system of using different routes. So what is the outlook? And for a short term, we cannot see where the pandemic is going, and we are not yet sure what the terrible war in the Ukraine means. But these accelerators and driving forces for our industry, like digitalization, online travel agencies, social media, we have better marketing, budget concept, low-cost carriers, they are still alive, and they will drive our industry again after the pandemic. Oh, sorry. And I think that city tourism will be back in 2023, 24. And we see a increasing importance of the neighboring markets. We see a discrepancy between climate protection and mobility. It's not yet sure if holidays or traveling in the future will be more local, more quiet, and more sustainable. I'm looking at what's going on in Europe at the very moment, and people really like to fly, and they like to travel after these years. And I saw in Salzburg, Eurowings put 2 planes, and within a few weeks, the planes were booked out, and all these planes were flying into the Mediterranean Sea. So I'm not quite sure if people will follow the rules we think. So there is an increase of tiny hotels and apartments, and we are not yet sure where business traveling goes, but the smaller meetings will be online for sure. Well, the markets, we opened German-speaking market in the first year of the pandemic, 21 the European countries, also the the Gulf states, the United States will follow this year, and Asia will be probably following next year. We have to communicate the benefits of the cities, and we have to focus. We have to put the focus on various advantages, like the infrastructure. We have all the traffic hubs, hotels, stadiums, event conventions, and locations. And it's the city where the vibrant life is going on. We have all the mega events, the sport events, the attractions. We have culture, we have museums, we have all the huge festivals. We have shopping, design, architecture, historic sites, and all kind of points of interest. And I'm quite sure that people will come back, and they will more than ever like to see all these attractions and sites. And the cities, of course, we do know that traveling into cities, mobility means the production of carbon dioxide, but moving, if you look at the people moving or having a holiday in a city, what do? They're walking around. They're walking from one attraction to the other. They are going to eat. They have a coffee. They are shopping. So that's not so very bad in terms of sustainability. And they use an infrastructure that is also used by the locals. And city tourism is an all-year tourism, and we are quite convinced that Salzburg will come back as a well-known, positive, consistent brand with a very clear and clean positioning as a beautiful city, and a city of culture and classical music. And we saw in 2020 and 2021, during the summertime, we saw a fast recovery of tourism, and we saw a great adaptability. I showed you the numbers of the growing nearby market. Salzburg itself is an exceptional product, and it's a stunning small city, and we are very positive to come back to probably a little different normality, but I think city tourism will come back. So far, that's all from Salzburg.
Vielen Dank, Ed. Vielen Dank. Thank you very much for a very interesting body of knowledge regarding city tourism in Salzburg, which is a great brand, as everybody knows. And if I may ask you to address one question which we have from Julia, or excuse me if I'm saying it incorrect, maybe Julia, but she's asking something interesting, and I will ask it to you, if I may. Would you still consider 2019 to be the benchmark for all kinds of statistics? Because she's saying that we're still using the pre-pandemic statistics as a benchmark. And she says, actually, she's asking, why not treating it as the new normal or the new different statistics? So are you actually expecting Salzburg to come back to its numbers?
Well, we have a huge portion of touristic infrastructure. Yeah, we have a lot of hotels, we have a lot of gastronomy. Yeah, we have a lot of sites and museums, and we have a lot of shopping areas. We have a lot of festival halls, and it's a beautiful product that people want to see. Everyone once in his life wants to see Salzburg. So I guess many of these beautiful places, yeah, people like to go to beautiful places and they like to see them, and I think they also will come back to Salzburg. I don't know if it's gonna be more than this, and it's not so easy, you know, to lock down a city like Salzburg, which is very open, and we are all used to free traveling, yeah, and well, this is a difficult question, and of course.
At this point, I'm Julia. I would like to make like a appointment there, because of course Salzburg and the whole world want to visit places and wanted places to be visited, but and myself, for example, I'm an international student. I'm here in a Erasmus program, and I really wanted to be here and travel around and new things and all these things, of course. But at the same time, my question was about the way in which we will do this from now on. It's, of course, and there's like the part more technical and economical part, which is really important, because if not, it's not working, it's not a business anymore. And I understand that for Salzburg, and I'm from Barcelona, I mean, we are both cities who live from tourism, but this is the point, no? I mean, if we live from tourism, maybe now is the moment in which we should start to develop a new way in which to do it.
Yeah, I think digitalization will do something. Yeah, people are now used to book things in advance. Yeah, to book experiences in advance, to book hotels in advance, and with this booking in advance, I think we get a possibility to guide it much better than we could now. Because with these systems, yeah, we can limit, yeah, the visitors, yeah, and can better steer them through our city, and it won't be easy. It won't be easy for the very attractive. It won't be easy to get a ticket all the time to the most popular sites. Yeah, and this could probably limit the flow of tourists. But at the very end of the day, I have to ask, what's wrong with your wish or my wish or anyone's wish to visit Salzburg or Barcelona?
Thank you, Judah. Sorry. Our timing is up, and I need to move on. So I'm really sorry. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you.
I would just like to bless, before I'm handing on the floor to Mr. Genomax, the Managing Director of Salzburg Convention Bureau. I just saw that our founder of our department in the Ashkelon College joined us. So Amos Ron, Dr. Amos Ron, thank you very much for joining us, and blessings from all of us. He's the founder of our department in Ashkelon, and thank you for joining us. And just before that, if I may move to Mr. Marx, that's your time to try and answer. And if you may look at the chat during your talk, you may give some answers which people are regarding. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, trying to start the screen share. I'm just introducing myself quickly. So my name is Gernot Marx. I work for the Salzburg Convention Bureau. We're the state convention bureau here for the state of Salzburg. So for the city of Salzburg, but also for the province or state of Salzburg, with a lot of alpine regions and areas. And I think you can see my presentation now. And I thought about the influences on meeting destinations. I'm working with a lot of different destinations. I'm currently working with a lot of influencers and event managers and other event profs on the topics of change in our industry, which is quite interesting because everybody's talking about change and nobody can nail down the pain points they have in our industry, besides the economic impact, of course, because of COVID. And I try to kind of find out 3 topics that influence us as a convention bureau here in Salzburg, but also other colleagues and other meeting destinations. And first of all, I'd like to start with the dependencies. This is actually something that gives us, and I hear a lot of colleagues, sometimes a hard time, because convention bureaus, especially DMOs as well, but convention bureaus as such are really, really dependent on infrastructure. We hear a lot about tourism going virtual, meetings and conferences going virtual, just like the webinar we have now. But in fact, the economic success of business tourism is based on the usage of infrastructure. And Bert mentioned that already for the city of Salzburg. I see that the same, and infrastructure changes slowly or not at all. That's something we see in many destinations. So during the pandemic, we saw many hotels that have been innovative, that have rebuilt meeting rooms into studios for virtual meetings so that the client has a professional studio, but not a lot, to be fairly honest. The other question would be the demand in future. And if infrastructure doesn't change and demand doesn't go up again, and we have a lot of infrastructure here, especially with hotels, gastronomy. If, for example, hotels don't fill up quickly, especially investment projects, hotels that are founded by investment companies, they will readjust their purpose of that infrastructure. So it could be, and we already see that a little in other destinations, that hotels are empty since years, probably even before the pandemic, and now the purpose is readjusted to building flats in there or apartments or whatever. So that's one of the dependencies we have as well with infrastructure. And then, of course, the financing based on the detour profitability, meaning that a lot of DMOs these days, and convention bureaus especially, because convention bureaus are really relying on the money from a lot of suppliers in their destinations, on their marketing activities. Some have members, some don't have members. The financing of convention bureaus is a problem because these days less money comes in. Let's say it like this, and the complex stakeholder systems of convention bureau often bringing heterogeneous economic needs, and these kind of financial structures make it hard for convention bureaus these days to take over the marketing and the sales promotional activities on the market, because usually suppliers, they cut down on their marketing budgets. So this is a big influence for us as well at the moment, because we're nearly the only ones taking over marketing and destination marketing in the convention segment, of course, in the events and corporate event segment. Last but not least, something very important is that the kind of marketing convention bureaus do is really dependent on the local business location, the scientific and research location of a destination. I always, when I said that, I think last week at a presentation with a lot of students here from the university in Salzburg, the last thing an event manager or a company or an association is thinking of is filling up a hotel or filling up a location or buying food and beverage and catering. So the motivation of meetings in the associations field and corporate field has a different motivation. Tourism in that case, and especially infrastructure, is just a way of realizing an in-person meeting. And if we wouldn't have strong researchers here and scientists in Salzburg, for example, some very hot topic congresses, for example, wouldn't take place in this city. And even this year we see international and European congresses coming back to the destination. So we need to develop a local strategy and a new market position, because it doesn't, this kind of one size fits all marketing doesn't fit anymore. We used to go to a trade show where the whole world went, like IMEX or IBTM in Frankfurt and Barcelona. And then we waited for 3 days, the clients to come, or we probably did something ourselves to pre-schedule appointments there with interesting clients. I think that because the clients and the kind of clients, associations, corporates, are getting more specified with the formats and with the event formats they're planning, we need to end this kind of one-size-fits-all marketing approach and be more structured and more specific in our marketing activities we use to approach the clients as well. And this is very resource intensive. Second of all, there's a lot of new competition, especially when it comes to developments of infrastructure in other destinations globally. I mean, it's dependent on the geopolitical agendas at the moment, but even before COVID, we saw already a very strong development in a lot of destinations we've been all of a sudden competing with. And then on the other side, we have the hybrid virtual multi-hub trends that produce more digital competition and awareness. Just for example, Hop-In, which is a virtual software as a service company offering software to manage virtual events and hybrid events. Hop-In is now worth $2 billion US. They get, and there are several other companies, tech startups that come in and try to disrupt the physical meeting industry. And they get so much investments these days, and I'm talking hundreds of millions of euros at the moment, that compared to the destinations and convention bureaus marketing budgets, tech startups are using their marketing power to influence the public, the corporate, and the political opinions on meetings. And they're coming in is one very important thing, and that is, if you don't travel and if you attend a meeting online and virtually, you're saving the environment, which I strongly doubt. Because it has other effects if you only attend virtually, which we all have by now, I guess, found out with Zoom fatigue and other things. But these kind of companies are, we cannot discuss them away. And we need to use their marketing power as well. And also we need to accept that there are other destinations starting up and building new infrastructure in new destinations we compete with. So competition is something that we need to enforce with tech startups on the one side, but also to use their marketing power, but on the other side also with other destinations. And something we do in Salzburg, for example, in 2020, after the first lockdown or during the first lockdown, we started the European Convention Bureau Network, which is an alliance of 8 different destinations, from all the way in Gothenburg to Valencia, down to Ljubljana and Rotterdam and other destinations, Lyon in France and Salzburg, of course. And we said, okay, why should each of us 8 destinations approach the client individually. Why should we bother clients individually 8 times and then there are other destinations? Why don't we gather up and give the client the benefit of having probably one webinar during the lockdown to see the destinations instead of 8 different webinars or 8 different meetings at a trade show? And also what comes in there is the multi-hub trend. So the one thing is the virtual attendance and hybrid meetings, but multi-hub events could be a little solution, which we try to look at the European Convention Bureau Network as well. That means that one and the same congress or conference is taking place at the same time at probably 5 different cities in Europe or globally, but at the same time you're sitting. You have 100 people sitting in Barcelona, 100 people sitting in, I don't know, London, 100 people sitting in Valencia, 100 people in Salzburg. And they're all following the same, but still they have this physical experience during a meeting. That will be a very interesting trend to follow. The question, of course, is, and that's the same with hybrid and virtual meetings, the technology and also the software licenses are not free of charge. So actually, we hear a lot of clients saying hybrid meetings and virtual meetings, where you have a lot of tech to offer a good experience. I'm not talking about Zoom now, I'm really talking about good virtual conference experiences. This is way more expensive than to host one in-person meeting. So we see that clients are very often challenged in terms of to finance this kind of events, which might be one reason why clients are not coming back, are sooner coming back to physical meetings as well. And then I go to the next slide. It's upskilling. I think we have one problem which we share with a lot of destinations as well, and especially in the meetings industry. This is something we discover now is very important, and that's skilled labor shortage. In fact, there isn't a labor shortage. In fact, there is a skilled labor shortage. And this is very important to differentiate, because with all these challenges I spoke about, and I'm sure you have 10 other trends and things that change at the moment, we need to train the people working in hotels, locations, but also in DMCs, event management companies, etc. We need to train them to psychologically be resilient, to cope with this kind of consistent change. I guess VUCA is you know what VUCA is, the vulnerability, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity in our world. This trend is here, we're experiencing it. I still believe that we are way more resilient than a lot of people think, but on the other side, the change will go on. And one of the things we need to skill as well and train people as well is multisensorics. Multisensorics is, there's a very interesting research done in Germany at the moment by Steffen Ronft. And he's researching on multisensorics during events, live events, but also virtual events. And so far, we found out that the in-person effects and sustainable transfer of learning goals for meetings are better in in-person meetings than in virtual meetings or for virtual attendance. So there is first research data that shows us as well that the differences of in-person and physical attendance and virtual attendance as well. Serendipity is something that is way harder during a virtual conference. So serendipity means if I'm at ITB in Berlin or IMEX in Frankfurt or IBTM in Barcelona, I not only have pre-scheduled meetings, but I randomly see a colleague talking to another person. That person might be a client, or that person might be some other interesting person I have some business interest in common with. So these kind of coincidences don't happen in I call it real world, but in the physical, only happen in the real world, but not in the virtual world. And transformational experiences as well is something Salzburg is researching on as well a lot. And I think everybody at a meeting wants to take with not just cognitive information like we're sharing now. I think everybody wants to take with them a personal experience that enables them to see a transformation, you know. I mean, that could be a yoga session during the lunch break or a coffee break instead of standing around a coffee buffet and eating cake. It could be other things, you know, it could be personal chats you have at the gala evening at the bar with somebody you just recently met and have never met before, serendipity again. So this kind of transformational experiences are getting more important, and we need to learn how to design those transformational experiences, because very often business events and in business in general, we kind of try to avoid emotions, try to avoid personal experiences, because you know, you have your personal experiences at home, you have your personal experiences somewhere outside of work. And I think we need to accept that there isn't a work-life balance anymore, but work is part of life. And that means that you need to feel authentic in kind of a conference area, for example. You need, if you're a first timer at a conference, you need somebody to take you and introduce you to all the important people or to other people that might be interesting to you. So like a mentoring system in conferences, which is something we try to do at our annual conferences with ICA and with other platforms like the Austrian Convention Bureau annual conference, etc. And it works, especially for young people, or also for people who just started in the industry. Last but not least, the cognitive formats lead to longer timescales and more phases of events. So we were used to have a conference that takes place in 3 days. And in these 3 days, we actually had to do everything. We had several sessions parallelly, then we had some breakouts, and we had some maybe satellite meetings around the conference, but that took place in 3 or 4 days. Now conferences are actually something that goes on for a year, because you have smaller events pre the conference and post the conference to specialize in. And a congress or a conference that takes place for 1 day or for 2 days or for 3 days is nice, but you don't have the time to go to have a deep dive. And that is why around the bigger conferences, a lot of smaller events and conferences that specialize in a particular field are now coming up. That means for also for the suppliers and for us as a destination, that there might be a neurology conference with 3,000 to 4,000 people that takes place in, I don't know, a big city in Vienna or something. And on the other side, now we benefit from it in Salzburg, because even smaller hotels, they benefit from 1 or 2 or 3 post or pre-meetings for that conference, so more specialized meetings. And 2 to 3 years ago, nobody would have thought that an association organizing the big conferences in their industry every year, nobody would have thought that they might be interesting to a meeting hotel which has meeting space for 100 people and probably 100 bedrooms or 150 bedrooms. Now it is all of a sudden it's interesting, and we need to upskill sales and marketing people, for example, to know that, because they need to talk about that and find that out when they talk to potential clients. Usually congress centers and convention bureaus speak to associations about the congresses, and the hotel salespeople keep away, because they know, oh, that business comes anyway when the convention bureau secures it with the congress center in a destination. But now it becomes a direct impact on smaller infrastructure as well. So the conclusion, again, the training and development of event professionals will become a success factor as well, because the people need to know that the world changes, and this needs to be understood by both the client side, the market, and the supplier side. Last but not least, to sum it all up, so we have the dependencies on that challenge in the current system. We need to cope with the increasing competition, and we need to prepare for these changes, and we need to prepare the workforce, and they need to be upskilled. the question, after all, will not be, and I think that has been very clear by Bert Bucker from the city of Salzburg, the question will not be, is or are corporate and association meetings coming back? But it will rather be, what kind of business do we want to come back, and what do we need to do in order to fulfill that and to bring back that business that we want and that's good for our destinations. Thank you very much. And if there are questions, I'm happy to answer.
Anna, thank you very much for some excellent ideas and wrapping it up in a well-marketed thought. So thank you very much. As our timing is crucial, I'll be moving on, if I may, to Jerusalem side of this webinar. And our next distinguished speaker is Miss Ilanit Melchior, good friend from Jerusalem, who's the head of tourism for the municipality of Jerusalem. And she's going to be the last lecture before the next virtual tour will take place for summing it up. Ilanit, please be our guest.
Thank you, Shachar, and it's really exciting to do that, even though it's virtual. I think that you actually, I would like to take this time that I have to speak about more action items that we have been doing in the city of Jerusalem, and some of the things that I could see that already developing an influence in our city. Just to give some numbers, so Jerusalem before COVID had almost 3.8 million tourists, almost 5 million overnight stays. And we managed to actually position Jerusalem as a culture, a city based on its heritage and history. And I was also overviewing some of the questions that came up to the other speakers, so I would also relate to them since we have been touching them. So I will want to speak about three kind of accessibility that the city of Jerusalem had to do after COVID. And the first one is the accessibility for technology. What do I mean by that? That Israel is the startup nation, yes. Before COVID, we have established a tourism accelerator that connects between technologies and different sectors, including conventions bureau and tour guides and other practices with technology. But it was not really as, I would say, as a natural partner to the tourism industry. What do I mean by that? For example, all our museums were not really accessible to organize any kind of tour unless it was physically on the ground. So what we have been doing now is that we have been giving grants to all the different museums. In Jerusalem, we have more than 76 museums. So one might mistakenly think that Jerusalem is a very cultural city. And what was important for us is that tourists will have the ability to learn, to be inspired, to get excited by the city in the same way that our dear friend from Salzburg did the wonderful tour in Vienna. And that was quite impressive. So I understood that as a city, we have to make it a daily product, no matter if you have COVID, yes or no, but it's something that the local businesses can actually earn money, whether the tourists are here physically or whether we just inspire them on their way to come to the city. So this is one, recommendation that I would share with my dear colleagues from the different parts of the world. So that was one example. On MICE and convention, everyone spoke about hybrid conferences coming, not coming. I truly believe that we are just actually developing the product to be much more professional. There will always be some people that will not be able to come for different reasons, but the fact that now we can offer them in a very high level with technology, really feeling that you are part of a conference, even though you're not there, but you can still share your expertise. It's something very important. If we already have been processing in that direction, why not incorporate it to our daily work, when we are doing that? Because we also have friends around the world that maybe it's too far, too expensive. So that given accessibility to more experts to be part of that. The other accessibility that I want to speak about is the accessibility to information. There's too much information. There is a lot of knowledge who is out there. I can tell you from my city, just trying to explain Jerusalem, and Shachal, you're smiling, and you know that better because you've been working in our city. So let's try to explain to someone a history of 3,000 years. Even I'm confused by that, right? So how do we incorporate the information to be much more accessible, easy, and much more tailor-made to what our client, and I know we are speaking about tourists, but I want to talk to them as our client, as our consumer. And so how do we make it for them easy to walk around the city, to plan their time, to be much more accurate if they have kids, family, whatever. So what we did during COVID, and it will take us now a year to actually come out to the world with that, is that our online website, I Travel Jerusalem, is going to be tailor-made, incorporate with new technology, and let me dare say in AI. Okay, AI is not only for medical or to other industries. It can be also very valuable for tourism, because the website that I would see and Afar always with us would see can be different. So why should she need to get all that information when she can get a website that will be tailor-made to what she's interested in? And the kind of information that she will look for will be really incorporated to what is her profile or what her family and kids. So all of this accessibility to a more accurate information will make the experience and the before, when you are planning your trip, but also when you are down in the ground, much more fruitful, as I can see that. And I think that that's something that we all have to work as destinations. The last kind of accessibility that I want to speak about is the way that we as a tourism bureau can be adapting to quick changes. Meaning that I think that one of the things that Corona at least taught me in the city of Jerusalem was based on 85% of inbound tourism. And suddenly we didn't have tourists anymore. So the locals, the Israelis, yes, they would come to Jerusalem, but in very small numbers. And we as a city, we did not invest in them, right? They were not our potential clients. So suddenly we had to fill our hotels, which were on zero. So what are you doing? And the competition was between Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Eilat, Tiberias. So everyone were fighting on the same amount of people. So I understood that we need to be much more sophisticated in what we are offering, that we need to do sometimes even cooperation with other cities, like the Dead Sea is close to us, so why not doing something together with them? And we also need to look, and I know in Europe it's very easy, because in Europe you can travel from one place to another by car, by train. And here in Israel, we are kind of an isolated island. I know that everyone is talking about the Abraham Accords and there was a peace process coming, but still it's not a natural, moving from one Arab country to Israel so forth, even though we are doing more efforts in that direction. So we need to do much more in Jerusalem, much more cooperation with cities, by the way, internationally and also locally. So I think that as a tourism bureau, we all need to think all the time out of the box and to keep ahead few steps forward. Meaning that we can always be conservative, or we can say this method or this strategy have been working, but we also have to prepare ourselves and our team to be thinking out of the box and to be much more flexible in offering changes and solution on time on ground, because we are responsible to so many small, medium, and large businesses in the city. When you think about it, just in the city of Jerusalem, if I have more than 100 hotels, which each one of them have an average 150 rooms, and you multiply that by almost 3 or 4 people that are employed, I am responsible to the employment of more than 50, 60,000 people. It's like I'm a big corporate. So I urge our friend here in this great symposium to think about it, that you're actually running a corporate. You are responsible directly and indirectly to so many people. And if you are really looking at them, and I think that one of the things that, I took very hard personally, even though my salary was really okay and all my, conditions were kept, that I truly understood that there were people that found themselves with no stability. So it was our tour guide and it was our hoteliers, etc. And once I got it, then I was fighting with the government because the public sector had more funds, to bring more money into the city to allow different kind of solution that open the gate and possibilities for them to earn money, even though we have been part of COVID. Did I manage 100%? No, but I think we have managing to do 40% extra, and that was more than just doing nothing at that time. Another important thing for me to say is to speak about the. There was a question about the environment, and I truly believe that we have to think about how we as a destination really integrate the thinking about environment as part of the DNA of our tourism bureau. What do I mean by that? It can be nice to declare that we are thinking green. It's nice, but it's not sufficient. It's not good enough. Today, in the project that we are offering to different investors in the city, or whether we as a city promoting them, or we are going even to make an open call for all our partners from the business sector, we are going to incorporate in our strategic way of working the fact that we respect the environment. I think it's something that is very, very important. And if it will come down top, I think also the stakeholders, along with other international organizations such as the UN World Travel Organization, which will be, it will be much more part of the policy making, but it has to be part of the industry as well as the decision level makers. It's another important issue for me to bring out. And I think that what I learned from everything that happened in the last 2.5 years is that the private sector and the public sector have to work in much more close way together. Someone asked about packages. I can tell you that I do not do any promotional campaign to the city, whether it's locally or internationally, unless I can incorporate into the package as many as I can a project that will bring money into the restaurants or the museums or the hoteliers and combine all of them together. So during COVID, we did a package where we would call Israelis to come and they will get a voucher of 10 euros to get a free entrance to more than 150 different businesses, from museums to restaurants. Or we would do a concert that would get all these things. Always make the right linkage between small businesses to tourism, and they are really the engine to make sure that this industry will grow and accelerate. And I would just say one last thing is that I'm not very optimistic. I'm truly optimistic about the tourism industry. It's not going anywhere. I think that we as Tourism Bureau will have to be accessible, thinking faster, technological, have the more professional people working also for us as an industry, so they can meet up with the need of what is happening on the ground. And I think that we also need to have more like those international cooperation also practically, because yes, we are a competitor, but at the same time, we can learn from each other, we can improve the product, and we can give a better and a more beneficial and more valuable experience to our clients. So I want to thank you, Shachar, for this opportunity.
Ilanit, thank you very much for some very informative and I would say very profound insights regarding urban tourism resilience and urban tourism recovery, which are both very interesting because you took your time in those 2 years to actually execute some technological parts which would improve your product for the future. And I believe this will fruit and blossom in the future. Thank you very much for this. And if I may invite all of us together. And now there was a question, by the way, regarding prices. I'm not ignoring it, but I'm not sure that this is the right webinar to deal with because prices in Israel should own their own webinar. It's a huge problem being dealt by the Ministry of Tourism. I'm not sure Ilanit is the right person to answer why it's so expensive. Neither in Jerusalem nor in Tel Aviv can you find anything cheap. But again, I would love to invite all of you, my friends, to an experience. And I'm using the word experience because Itamar Ben David is not only a talented guide, but a master of virtual tours. And he's actually the head of the Association of Virtual Tourism in Israel. And he's running it. And he's going to be our last speaker and last presenter just before summing up and concluding. So Ilani, thank you very much. Itamar, the floor is at your service.
Okay, thank you very much, Shachar. And I will also thank Ilanit that maybe she forgot with all her projects, but 14 months ago, she was boosting a lot of the guides in Jerusalem to do virtual tours. So really, I'll take the opportunity to thank her for that as well. Okay, so the beautiful trees that you see behind me, these are the cedar trees of Mount Herzl. We'll get to Herzl right away. I'll just say a word about myself. I'm Itamar Ben David, tour guide for 15 years here in Israel. 2 of these years, I've been guiding virtually hundreds of virtual tours, training hundreds of guides. Again, thanks to the boost that Ilanit and her organization gave us. So with that said, earlier we saw Francis giving us what we call live on location kind of virtual tour, a tour guide with the gimbal and phone, hanging out in the streets of whatever destination, and market himself, market the destination, maybe earning a little bit of money on the way. So this is one thing that we do. Another thing is what we call live from home or at home tours. And one of the reasons we did that, or actually I would say that the Israeli guides in general are more strated to at home tours. The reason is very simple. Because of the lockdowns and because a lot of the markets of these tour guides were in North America, and with the time differences back in 2020, as we approached winter, people were not really keen to give live streams from the different streets of whatever destinations in Israel. So I would say this was developed pretty fast in Israel. And when I showed that to my peers in other countries, they were like, why are you doing that? Like, this is like, that was very surprising for them. And slowly, like, other of my peers are embracing that. So let's jump in. So I'll start with thanking Google Earth that created in the last few years, what we know as Google Maps, Google Earth, and taking photospheres, them and their content providers, it took photospheres all over the world and basically enable us to do virtual tours using their project feature. So let's pick it where our dear Francis was earlier, back in Vienna. So this is the cemetery of Cedar Herzl. There you go. That's the entrance. This is where Francis took us just a few, what is that, like 2 hours ago, a little less than 2 hours ago. And from Vienna, let's hop on to Israel. As you can see, at-home tours enable us to, and Google Earth enable us to cover distances very, very quickly with a matter of seconds. So this is Israel clearly. I won't really go into the geography of it or anything like that. Just want to point out that I will be taking you from Jaffa back then of the 19th century to Jerusalem. Okay, so you can see that it's pretty much in the middle of the country. Tel Aviv is on the coast and Jerusalem is clearly on the mountains, the Judean Hills. So let's land at the first stop of Theodor Herzl. We're talking about the years 1898, October and November, early November of 1898, and Herzl is coming to Israel. Now, I want to just, Francis mentioned his life and what he was doing, PhD in law, a journalist, etc. But Herzl, in many ways, is a modern Moses or a modern Redeemer, no less than that. It's not me saying that, it's actual rabbis that saying he's Moses, or maybe even greater than Moses. Why? Because Moses delivered the children of Israel after 400 years in the bondage of Egypt, but Herzl delivered the children out of 100 different countries after 2,000 years of exile. So maybe it's Moses, maybe it's a greater than Moses. So this is where our modern Moses landed here in Jaffa. So let's take a quick look. This is Jaffa port, and Herzl will arrive here at late October of 1898. Here he is, very surprised from the gang that was around him. As you can see, took a picture with all of them. And as he approached the coast of Israel, he said, "Oh, take a look at the Jewish coastline," as he wrote it in his diary. That was a pretty interesting remark. He got the sad truth is that it was underdeveloped yet. We're talking about the Ottoman era. No hotels, no luxurious hotels or anything like that. And from there, he will go for a visit in few of the colonies and farms that were established in the second half of the 19th century. So Jaffa, old Jaffa, is this area that you see over here, okay? And I'll zoom out a little bit. There you go. Here is modern Tel Aviv. You can see it right over here. And the road that you see here is the old road to Jerusalem. And there is a beautiful palm trees avenue that you see over here, leading us to a place called Makeface Trail, which is a farm school that was established in the 1870s, and a very impressive place. And one of the reasons it's so impressive and was important for Herzl to meet up with Kaiser Wilhelm II, that was his own, in his own diplomatic mission here, to say hi. It's because it's just before the actual journey to Jerusalem, and also it's a symbol of the revival of the Jews, from Luftgeschäft, yes, from air business that the Jews were involved in Europe for hundreds of, if not thousands of years. All of a sudden, the Jews are taking root and they are establishing farms and colonies in the land of Israel. So this is what is happening over here. You can see these are the Jews studying in this school. All of a sudden, they are attached to the ground. Okay, that's quite impressive. Again, we're talking about this time. So next to Makeface Trail, just over here on the actual road, until today, we have this place that commemorates the meeting between Herzl, that you see over here, this bronze statue, and Kaiser Wilhelm II. That's what you see over here. And Herzl really knew a lot about marketing, and he basically said, okay, I have to take a picture with this, emperor, this Kaiser Wilhelm II. He's huge. But his photographer missed, and sadly, he only got, on the left corner, that's the original photo, he only got Herzl's foot over here, and this is Kaiser Wilhelm. So what they did, David Wolfson said, okay, Herzl, let's go to the beach in Tel Aviv. I'll take a picture of you. I'll do the photo montage and all that. Probably one of the first photo montage ever. And he took a picture of Herzl, got him in. And if you look carefully, you'll see that Kaiser Wilhelm II is sitting here on the white horse, but in the picture that was published, he's on the black horse. See, he was just removed to that horse. So Herzl will be in the picture. This, of course, made tremendous effect on the Zionist movement, as yes, we are meeting diplomats. It took 3 years for Herzl to get that meeting, get that interview of maybe just 10 minutes or so with Kaiser Wilhelm. But Kaiser Wilhelm said, not here. Let's have a proper interview in Jerusalem. Just meet me in Jerusalem. So Kaiser Wilhelm is on his way with his wagons and horses and all that, and Herzl is back to Jaffa to the train station to take a train. A real nightmare it was back then to take a train to Jerusalem. So that's the original train station, renovated of course the last few years, and from there let's start our way to Jerusalem. So as we go, we are stopping just in the middle of the road just to show you how the Judean Hills looks like today. You can see the beautiful pine trees all over, planted by the JNF, the Jewish National Fund. That's the body that Herzl started with the Jewish agency. It started a little bit after the meeting with Kaiser Wilhelm, because Kaiser Wilhelm said, Herzl, what you guys need is water and shade. So I took the opportunity that we are here in the Judean Hills to show you this picture. Let me just upload for a second. Let's try it again. Okay, I see that it gives me some trouble. Okay, see, these technical issues can happen. So over here, these are the Judean Hills taken from aircraft, British aircrafts during the First World War. You can clearly see how arid the land is, like really no trees, all the way from the coast to Jerusalem. So this is, again, how it looks like today. Let's move on to Jerusalem. I want to introduce you finally to Kaiser Wilhelm. So poor Herzl is arriving after hours of the ride on the train, and he gets to this train station. By the way, this is Jeth, the Jerusalem tourism hub in Jerusalem that is supervised also by Ilanit. So over here, that's its location today, this historical building. And Herzl is really sick, but is also very, very happy that he finally arrived to Jerusalem. Okay, so this is him and his delegation. He stayed in a place called Hotel Kamenitz. It's one of those pretty miserable places that sadly, although it's important historically that it was not kept, it's not very well kept. So this is the hotel where Herzl stayed. And today it's just an apartment building. You see all the parking just next to it, really not observed the way we saw the train stations, for example. So he stayed over here and a few other places in Jerusalem, and he toured the city in the next few days, waiting for his interview with Kaiser Wilhelm. So here is a simplex picture. Simplex is a three-dimensional model, basically, of Jerusalem that kindly provided us during COVID and allowed us to use it. So this is beautiful Jerusalem, the old city of Jerusalem. You can see the Mount of Olives right over here, Dome of the Rock. Church of the Holy Sepulchre is over here to the left. And let's get a quick closer look. Just walking with Herzl. He was walking by the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. People tried to convince him, no, you're like the king of the Jews, like the Messiah. Don't go there. That's basically what they said to him. This is the Horva synagogue in the Jewish quarter, and clearly the Temple Mount and the Western Wall. That's what you see over here. So this is his tour of the Mount of Olives. So while he's waiting, he was touring around, and basically what he said about Jerusalem is that once we have you, the first thing I'll do is to clean you. Okay, that's the words of Herzl in his diary. Finally, he's getting to his grand moment. He's meeting Kaiser Wilhelm these are the tents, and you can see the Kaiser and his entourage. You can see it right over here. And he's meeting him, and he had a speech to him. Okay, he had a speech, a very long speech. We won't read all of it. I just want to point out a few things. He basically says, Your Highness, a delegation of the people of Israel is approaching you, the Kaiser of Germany, with out of respect. In the land that was our father's land and no more. There is no bill, let's say, that gives us, that ties us to this land. And therefore, we have to ask you for a charter. We have to ask you to help us get our charter to have a national home He didn't say national home, of course, but that was the point. So this is number one. Number two, he was talking about the crisis of the Jews in the Pale of Settlement in Eastern Europe, how miserable they are, and how miserable the country is. So maybe we can solve these two problems: the problem of the Jews in Eastern Europe, the Ostjuden, and the problem of this country, how bare and miserable this country is. So also the Ottomans will benefit much from it, and you, as a person that has good ties with the Ottomans, with Abdulhamid II, the Sultan, maybe you can influence him to support us, to support this goal. Also, he said, and this is the fourth point, and that's it, he said that we totally respect the faiths of all the faiths that are connected to this land, and we believe that the more moral humanity is, the better they understand the common source of their ideas and ideals. So this is Herzl basically trying to influence. That was the grand interview that he was waiting for 3 years to get. He hoped that Kaiser Wilhelm will be the one that helped the Jews get their national home under, like within the Ottoman framework. Lastly, I want to take you to to Mount Herzl. This is the Memorial Mountain in the southwest corner of Jerusalem. And sadly, Herzl, that had his wife Julie and 3 children, that's Paulina, Hans, and Trudy, they all passed away in terrible circumstances. He had one grandson that committed suicide after he learned that his parents died during the Holocaust. There is some mental illness in the family as well. Like we see that with Julie and 2 of the sisters. So we're talking about a pretty broken family. And part of it is that situation that the father is really absent. He's really constantly traveling all over Europe, to wherever he goes, and to the Ottoman Empire as well, to Istanbul. So he's barely at home, and he was actually writing in this diary how miserable he is not to see how his children grow. So that's a sad part of the family, of the actual family of Herzl. But with that, I want to end with a more optimistic note, entering Mount Herzl. So what I just did here, I optimized the video so you'll be able to walk with me into Mount Herzl. So the video itself is just a walking video, kind of like what Francis did, only that I'm at home. So these walking videos really help us, let's say, overcome problems like time differences, and that if I have to give a tour when it's dark or it's winter time, then I'm able to do that. So you can see there's a kiosk named after Herzl over there in Hebrew. So this is the entrance really to Mount Herzl. Let's just walk a little bit over here. It says also, this is Myrtle, by the way, Har Herzl, Mount Herzl, just over here. And these are the trees you saw in my background. These are the cedar trees, cedar that are symbol of the temple. The temple in Jerusalem was built with cedars of Lebanon. And these are the trees that were planted back then in the early 50s. His body was brought here in 1949. And I want to show you not just the trees clearly, but also the tomb. While I was there, and it's very, very common to see that, you always see soldiers, visiting the place, school children, sometimes tourists. I mean, during COVID, not so much, but sometimes tourists. So let's just jump a little further, and we are in that plaza. This is the plaza where the ceremony for the independence of Israel takes place annually. And as I said, Herzl doesn't have any living offspring, okay, and no living descent. So as we walk up to the tomb of Mount Herzl, really at the very top of Mount Herzl, I just want you to virtually think about taking a stone and putting it on his grave. People really, like tourists that are not Jewish that come to Israel, really wonder about this custom, this tradition, and the fact that in most cemeteries we don't really have flowers, and there's a reason why we don't have that. It's kind of separating life belongs to life and death belongs to death, and we put that stone. So let's take a virtual stone together and put on Herzl's tomb right over here. And the word for stone in Hebrew is even. Evan, which could be an acronym of father, son, and grandson. And when we put that stone, we are connecting to that personality, saying, we are a part of your dynasty. We are your offsprings. Okay, we are connecting him. And really, thanks to that Herzl, to that modern Moses, let's call it, we are all here. So in the background, you can see modern Jerusalem that he also envisioned. He believed that one day a big and modern Jerusalem will be built. So with that, I want to end and thank you all. And thank you very much, really, for inviting me.
Itamar, I'm plowing right now on my screen, if you can see. Thank you very much for an excellent short tour. I'd love to have an hour with you. I believe many others would love to.
Yeah, it was amazing.
This would be the right time to address our associate and actually our partner for this whole webinar to conclude just before I will. So Professor Eva Brugger, where are you?
Here I am. So thank you very much, Shahar. A warm welcome from our side, from Salzburg University of Applied Sciences. And thank you very much for this great afternoon. Thank you very much for providing the possibility to run this webinar that you addressed us some weeks, some months ago, to share ideas what we can do in such a webinar. And we concluded that we have in both countries, Israel and in Austria, issues with the recovery of urban tourism, as rural tourism picked up very quickly during the pandemic, but urban tourism still had a lot of issues. And we were exchanging ideas. What could we do? What could we talk about? Do we talk about the destination management organizations? Do we talk about attractions? What do we talk about? And then we ended up to have different input from perspectives, MICE management, city tourism, but especially also the attractions and the virtual tours. And when summing it up, we were starting with the idea, okay, we come from over tourism and city destinations. We had been talking for many months about too many people traveling to the cities. How do we deal with the overcrowding? How do we deal with the frustration of a poor tourism experience and disappointment of the locals? And we changed to under tourism or no tourism at all. So how to deal with the new situation? And we could realize that in urban tourism, a quick recovery was possible in 2020 during the summer months. But a quick recovery only on a, I would say on a basis. Because if suppliers dealt with the topics of hygiene and safety, and also when they took into account the host and guest relation, there was a quick recovery possible, but it was only a basis. But what was done during the first month will stay with us. I'm very sure that we will have to take these decisions and developments in account for the future. And what we were thinking about in the very beginning, that we will develop to post-COVID new normality, seems today that it won't be post-COVID, that it will be tourism with COVID in a new framework, and how we adapt to this new framework. City destinations, urban tourism, we have different kinds of cities in the context of further development with the pandemic. We saw cities who were dependent not too much on international tourism, but had possibilities for earthbound tourism. Opening borders to neighboring countries were quite successful in adapting very quickly. We saw in Austria quite a lot of success potential, whereas we heard in the presentation about Jerusalem that dealing with no international guests was a really great challenge. So we have a difference in between Austria and Israel, how we deal with a very special situation. So Ilanit could really present this intensively to us. And when we look at the recovery strategies, we were discussing quite a lot about quality tourism. changing more into the direction of quality tourism. It's not only about refurbishing our hotels, including more technology in our attractions. What is quality tourism? It's also about host and guest relationship. We experience that this relationship is so vital. We are in people's industry, and how will we live this relationship in between hosts and guests? How to keep up this relationship during times of lockdowns, during times of pandemic? And this is part of the quality tourism. But what we heard of Gernot Marx, it's also about transformational experiences, sustainable experiences, about meaningfulness of tourism experience, tourism activities. This is very vital for the urban destinations. And we will also have to broaden our perspectives, how to include the environments, how to include the rural areas and connect them with the city destinations during times when people are not looking for the crowded areas, but for individual activities. And this brings me to the topic of sustainability. So there were questions about sustainability, but it was also not only that we have to answer questions. I think it's vital, it's a basic topic that we have to deal more and more with sustainability. Again, Ilanit, you said sustainability has to be in our DNA. It doesn't only have to be a marketing approach. And the crisis showed that loving nature-oriented tourism is important. How do we deal with this in cities? How to include nature more in our city offers? But it's also about social sustainability, including the locals. And one topic which hasn't been addressed, but I think is very vital, is the topic of mobility. We experienced city destinations without a lot of traffic during the pandemic. We realized how quality of life could be improved in this context, and how can we include mobility questions for the sustainable tourism development in urban destinations. And we will also use technology more for the development of sustainability in urban destinations. Visitor flows are a core topic in this very context. But it's not only about visitor flows, it's also about experiencing destinations during times of insecurity or times that we can't travel. Travel experience can be provided. We saw it with the virtual tours in Israel. But we can use this also in future for the guest relationship, for preparing the city trips, how to make the cities attractive when having the first touch points during the inspiration phase of the traveler. So technology advancement and enhancement has been great. Thank you for sharing this with us, Itamar. It was really great experience. And finally, I want to also move to MICE management, what Gernot was sharing with us. City destinations are dependent on MICE, on business travel. We will face major disruptions and major changes. We won't go back to an old normal. But Gernot, it was great that you shared with us that it's not only about technology and hybrid events, but it's about cooperation. We are living in a network society, and especially in the city destinations, the network society will be vibrant and important for the business context and to enhance the experiences in this very context. And I want to finish with one very important topic that Sandra was pointing out, and this is very vital for our teaching here in Salzburg too. It's not only focused in destination management or destination management in cities, focusing on the guests. We're talking about management of living spaces. We have to include the locals. We have to include the local businesses much more intensively. Tourism has a contribution to living quality of life And we have to contribute to improve this quality of life also from the perspective of tourism. And this will also be in favor of the quality of tourism in future. So we have new perspectives for the development of tourism in city destinations. And I'm very happy to have been witness and to have been able to listen to all these perspectives. And I think we can take a lot of perspectives, different topics with us. We have a lot of food for thought. And thank you very much for everybody involved as organizers, as speakers. It was really a great experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eva. My concluding remarks will sum up in 60 seconds, Franz, and then we're done. If I may just remind you a very optimistic view, and that comes directly from the European Travel Commission. The ETC has conducted a long duration of a research following the last 2 years in 4 different waves of huge amounts of questionnaires. I'm talking about dozens of thousands of questionnaires dealt out through whole Europe. And the answers are quite amazing. City break, my friends, is still on a huge demand. As if COVID-19 has never appeared, or as if people simply don't want to give it up, but they want to continue on city breaks. So in that concluding remarks, as Ilanit said, I'm not only optimistic, I'm extremely optimistic about that, because I believe that the demand will find a way to materialize. Thank you very much for participating in this webinar, and hopefully you'll enjoy watching it again if needed, or send it to your friends. Thank you very much for all. Thank you, El Ram, my partner, and thank you, Michlelet Ashkelon, the Ashkelon College, for the whole thing. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Toda.